Good evening, Mirama. This is how we say good evening in Albanian. Welcome to tonight's public program of Summer School at School 2019. I hope you had a good or a great day today with your courses. I'm very happy tonight we can host the presentations of two of our course teachers, Julieta Aranda and Cesare Pietroiusti. It was really special to know some of the works that they both do. We have some more connections with Julieta, who also ran a course last year. This is the first time that we collaborate with Cesare, and we expect to know that this is only the beginning. Tonight we will focus on their individual work, but not only. We changed a bit the format of how we do public presentations in the evening for those who are again with us this year. So we will not have a break after the first presentation. We will go through the presentations, and then at the end we will have a discussion with both lectures for tonight. I hope you will find this small change in the format, let's say, convenient also for you. I'll just read briefly something from their biographies. You have also texts in the space. So Julieta Aranda is the co-director of e-flux and a frequent instructor for the Master Seminar Art and Science at the Art Institute in Basel, Switzerland. She holds the B.F.A. in filmmaking from the School of Visual Arts, New York, and an M.F.A. from Columbia University, New York. Her explorations span installation, video, and print media, with a special interest in the creation and manipulation of artistic exchange and the subversion of traditional notions of commerce through making art. Aranda's installations and temporary projects are intensely site-specific and often examine social interactions and the role that the circulation of objects plays in cycles of production and consumption. Julieta's work has been exhibited internationally in venues such as the Moscow Biennial 2007.
Yes.
Thanks so much for being with us this year. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, hello. It's actually great to be here because last year I was supposed to be in Prishtina, but my very young son had an accident. He broke his leg, and I ended up not coming because he could not come with a hobbled child. And what I did was run a seminar to Skype, which was very daunting and strange, and the students did show up every day. That room was, the students were there, so it's not, no, my Coca-Cola. So it was very, it feels really good to actually be like physically present in a place where I already was somehow. I'm trying to figure out how to do this without the people that are in my seminar suffering through hearing me say things twice. So I am going to, and it's also funny to have to switch modes from speaking in very general terms to speaking about myself. So I guess I'm not going to talk about the entirety of my work. I'm going to talk, I prepared something based on unrealized things and ideas like that. And then after that I can show you some other work that I do. Or maybe do I do it the other way around? Yeah, maybe I do it the other way around actually. Sorry. Okay, so we will do it the other way around. A lot of the work that I do is it's related to time. It's one of the constants that I in my work, like the idea of time, and then also getting to the point where I understand. I mean, like the questions I have asked myself are: does time have value? What kind of value is there an equivalence in 1 hour? Like, is an hour always an hour, or does it change depending on what you do with it? So, for more than a decade, I have been trying to answer that. So I'm going to show you a couple of the works that I have done in trying to answer that question. This is just a promo shot of me floating in zero gravity, just because it's very cool. It has nothing to do with time. One of the things that has captivated my mind is this thing that's called the International Date Line. It's an imaginary line that divides the world. It's in the South Pacific. Up until 1995, that was a straight line. That hole there was made in this imaginary line, because there is an archipelago nation that's called Kiribati or Kiribati. That was split in the middle by the International Date Line. And so the communications for them were a disaster, because this is like the most extreme mode of jet lag, let's say. So they would be, for half of the country it would be Tuesday, and for the other half it would be Thursday, because they were skipping, the 24 hours would be gone. And internal trade, communications, government situations was very messy, and so they decided in 1995 to deviate this line. And what I find quite interesting there is that the Kiribati is very much there. It's 33 islands. And yet, because of where it is positioned in the map, according to the way that we make them in the conventional maps of both Europe and America, it never appears on the maps. It always falls off. But even though they are there, however, this line, which is imaginary, is always there. And it makes me think a lot. It made me think a lot about what power is, because I found it very moving that this place, that's actually one of the one of the poorest, if not the poorest economy in the world, is pure subsistence, coconuts and fish. It's a place that actually managed to move time. So it challenged my notion of what power was. And so I isolated that line, and I've been working a lot just around the abstraction of this line. I've made it out of unfired clay so that it could exist in a situation that it's there and it's physical, but if you tried to touch it, it would crumble. I have made it into a wall type thing. And what it says is, I guess it also, I keep thinking, what it says on one side is yesterday, on the other side is tomorrow, and it leaves the question of where is today? And today becomes the line itself, right? As in, when you have a coin, you always think that it has two sides, but it actually has three sides, because that line, that thinness that allows you to flip the coin is a side on itself. And that is this, the present as being this very thin border between, the moment, yesterday, tomorrow, the moment we inhabit. I think I worked around the line, around the notions of power of Kiribati for maybe 5 or 6 years. And then I thought that it was kind of presumptuous to keep making work about a place without knowing the place, so I decided to go to Kiribati. That in itself was a very brutal endeavor, because they don't really have an embassy. They have some kind of part-time embassy in Hawaii, but you need a visa. So getting a visa was very difficult, and there is no direct flights or anything like that. You have to go, it took almost like 60 hours to get there, because I had to go from New York to LA, from LA to Australia, from Australia to Fiji, and from Fiji to Kiribati. And it was very funny because the time changed as I got into the next plane. The planes became smaller and smaller, and the flights more and more unreliable. So while the flight from New York to Los Angeles was very precise, it was okay, this will leave at 8:37 on Tuesday, and if you miss it, there is the 9:37 flight. By the time that I was flying from Fiji to Kiribati, I was flying in a 6-seater plane that was leaving at some point on Tuesday. And when the plane left me in Kiribati, it was okay, we'll come back for you in 10 days. And it was kind of intense, because it was also a place where there is they don't expect to receive tourists, so there is no infrastructure for tourists, no restaurants, no beautiful beaches, no hotels with a view, even though I had made a lot of research about the place, nothing had prepared me for what I found there, which was, I knew that there was a Second World War battle fought there between Japan and the US. But you imagine that we're going to get there and we're going to find that tasty sign in the wall that says, in honor of the brave soldiers, blah, blah, blah. And in reality, what was there is that everything was left as, the battle happened, and then people were like, okay, well, let's just go home. And they left the residue of war in the place. And then again, not only did the place already in the past challenge my notion of power, but in this case, it challenged my notion of what world is and what history is, because it was very clear to me that the people had zero affiliation and zero identification with these objects. That was a war fought in their absence, let's say. They really had nothing at stake in this battle, except being the unwilling host for it. So these things are left to rot in the beach. They are not monuments of anything. No, they hold no special memories. Children play on them sometimes. There is a kind of really haunting beauty, a bit like Ozymandias. That's what it made me think of. And it of course makes me think, when we are talking about the Second World War, what war are we talking about? And in what world? And at the expense of which history do we write a collective history? What it is that is not making it in? So this is, and also that this place, I kept working about Kiribati with photographs in this case, and then I was trying to figure out how they gained independence, and the way in which they gained independence is when their natural resources that could be mined became exhausted, and so then they were granted independence. And after that, they were assigned. What used to be mined there was phosphate, which is both used to make weapons and phosphorescent paint. And they were also assigned for nuclear testing. So I kept making some more works on the, time. And well, I think one of the last works that I made on time was with my working partner, Anton Vidokle, that I think you will have later in the month here. We made a project for the 2012 Documenta, which, I mean, we didn't make it for that, we showed it there. We made a work that was an economy based on time, which was a time bank, where we were trying to figure out the value of time and how did time function for artists? What, like, especially because the time that you have, the way that you use time as an artist is very different from the way in which you quantify productive time. If you are at an office, you start at 9 and you finish at 5. But if you're an artist and you go to your studio, maybe nothing happens for a full day. It's only when you're walking home or when you're having drinks with friends that something happens, and maybe it takes a month of nothing happening until things come together in your head, and in 45 minutes you make the artwork. But did it take 45 minutes to make the artwork, or did it take 1 month and 45 minutes? So this kind of question is something that we were trying to grapple with. Also, when it comes to the creation of value for artworks and what it is that gets accounted for. These are some views of the time bank installation, and there is a film that comes with the project, and these are some film stills from the film. And there is Anton, with whom I have been working for more than 15 years. We make e-flux together, which is, it's the dinosaur that it is. I love it. Now I'm going to switch onto the other thing. That's kind of like an overview of who I am and what I do. And the other thing that I want to show you, the one that is special for this, is here. Okay. So this is actually what I'm going to talk about now is an unrealized project of mine. That is probably, I mean, I don't know if I can really call it a project because it doesn't have a concrete shape. Maybe it will be better to describe it as a long-standing fascination that I wish to make work about one day. To start at the beginning, 19 kilometers south of the coast of Sicily, already in international waters, there is a submerged volcanic island. This island has not always been submerged, and in fact, it was about to be the reason behind the First World War of 1832, which fortunately also remained an unrealized project. This island rose above sea level in August 1831 and was quickly determined to be a most suitable spot from where to control sea traffic in the Mediterranean, trade routes with Africa being part and parcel of the European colonial endeavors of the time. And so several nations decided to claim ownership of the territory. The United Kingdom, what happened here? No, that's not what I want. What did I do? Yes, okay, sorry. The United Kingdom sent a boat to plant the Union Jack flag in the island and named it Graham Island, after Sir James Graham, whomever he was. The French Navy sent a boat with a geologist and a painter who named the island Isla Giulia in honor of the month of July. I don't know why. And Ferdinand II, the king of the two Sicilies, also sent boats and named the island Ferdinandea after himself, claiming it for the Bourbon crown. And even Spain came into the party and declared territorial ambitions, even though the name they gave to the island, if any, is not known. This nascent conflict captured the European imagination for 5 months, with newspapers giving it extended coverage, day trips being organized so that tourists could visit the island and see its small lakes, merchant boats deviated from the route to see it, and even the House of Bourbon declared their intention to set up a beach resort in the island's shore. As the 4 countries entangled in a dispute over the ownership of the island, which I personally call Ferdinandea since the story was told to me initially by a Sicilian friend, the threat of an armed conflict quickly escalated, and boats were lined up to defend the territorial claim of the 4 nations. However, quick as the conflict came, it was diffused, since the island suddenly sank again, so swiftly that by December 27, 1831, there was no trace of its existence, and the boats were sent home, thus giving world-scale conflicts a good extra 70 years to brew properly. As of today, Ferdinandea, which in reality is the tip of a volcano laying 6 meters below sea level, is still being claimed by the Knights of the Bourbon Order. I have come in contact with them a couple of times, and they are very, very charming. And it's also been claimed by the British. So there is an underwater rivalry that manifests on the Bourbon Knights. A lot of them are not only whatever they are, businessmen, doctors. The one that I know owns a religious article shop, but they are also divers. They are trained as divers, many of them. So they dive to the bottom of the 57 meters down, where is the base of this volcano, and they plant a plate that says, "Here is Ferdinandea, jewel of the Sicilian crown." And then later on, the British divers, I don't know who they are, they go and smash that plaque and declare how Graham Island belongs to the British. And so there is an underwater rivalry that manifests on the form of a plaque declaring Sicilian sovereignty over the territory, which gets routinely smashed by British divers and refurbished by the Bourbon Knights, who incidentally are excellent divers. I learned to dive with them. It was great. The story of Ferdinandea is absolutely fascinating. It has appeared on an ornamental coin. It was visited by Sir Walter Scott. It inspired a short story by James Fenimore Cooper. It was depth charged by the US military, who mistook it for a Libyan submarine. And it remains the subject of active geographic speculation by professors of international relations. One can perhaps imagine some wing of the Italian government hired to sit there in a boat in open waters for a whole generation, armed with surveying gear, testing for seismic irregularities, as if casting a spell to convince this future extension of the Italian motherland to come up for air. For me, Isola Ferdinandea is not only an unrealized island, but it's also an unrealized future. And what could have been there by the seaside? Unrealized futures interest me very much. I always think that it is because as a child I was an avid reader of science fiction, and as I grew up I have come to realize that there were promises in the literature of futurity, and that a lot of the futures that had been tacitly promised would be in place by the year 2000, everything ranging from flying cars to a Martian takeover, have sadly not come true, and are already past their expiration date. Many of the storylines taking place between the years 2000 and 2010. No, this is the way that where the plague is. That's the plague that gets smashed. So, what to do then with all those perfectly nice futures that are languishing in the pages, unfulfilled, effectively unrealized, lost in the vastness of what could have been? These alternative narratives have always intrigued me very much. Actually, there is a work of mine called There Has Been a Miscalculation, in which I try to touch upon this trove of potentiality. But that has not really been enough. That work is, I've made it in several variations. It consists of taking a lot of books of either history or science fiction. I mean, when I make it with science fiction books, I take as many books as I can find from that have storylines that already did not happen. So storylines that are set before 2019, if I were to make it today. And I pulverize them. And with the dust gets put inside a cube, and the cube has air pumps. So it never settles. And it becomes somehow of time that cannot come to rest because it simply never happened. But it was not, to me, that was not enough of trying to touch upon something. So recently I was invited to take part on a zero-gravity flight alongside several scientists and artists. That's like the promotional shot I showed you before. Maybe I have another one. This is more of that miscalculation work. More miscalculation. Zero-gravity flight. Maybe I have another. Cockpit, very nice. Books. Okay, no promotion. So when I was in the zero-gravity flight, I decided to take with me some of the books that I have already used for the There Has Been a Miscalculation project. And that are part of my library of unrealized futures, as I wanted very much to have the image of a slightly defunct science fiction library floating in a kind of limbo without the attachment to gravity, which is somehow the force that bounds all material realized object to the reality that we know and inhabit. The lack of gravity seemed fitting to those depictions of a future that have no material resonance. I was very surprised when, as the library was floating about, the scientists on board came to see it, and they happened to be familiar with most of the books. And they explained it made sense quickly because this was a literature that was dear to them. The unrealized futures in the books, probably fueled to some extent the dreams of their current research. Then, among the things of research that have interested me a lot is the work of a Mexican theoretical physicist whose name is Miguel Alcubierre. He presented a paper. This fantastic guy that just spent most of the flights going through the books that I took. He was great. Okay, so in 1994, a Mexican theoretical physicist named Miguel Alcubierre presented a paper. He had found, he claimed, the mathematical formula necessary to send a spaceship traveling faster than light. It is commonly accepted that nothing can travel faster than light in our universe. Special relativity does not permit it. The faster an object travels, the more energy is required to accelerate it. There is simply no way to exceed light speed. But Alcubierre was not interested in finding a way to send an object traveling faster than light through space. Instead, he proposed that space itself could move, if it were warped by an energy field. His formula envisioned a ship inside a bubble. Inside that bubble, everything is normal. But that bubble is moving through space by compressing the universe in front of it and expanding the universe behind it. Alcubierre's formula was reviewed and held to be mathematically sound, but practically unusable. The problems with the formula, which is known as Alcubierre's drive, and it's actually studied at NASA seriously, but the problems were significant. No one knew how to build an engine that would warp space that way. Even if some way could be found, the amount of this equation is dependent on a certain amount of exotic matter. And what the hell is exotic matter? That's the question. So at the beginning, even if some way could be found to create that kind of engine, the amount of exotic matter required to power it was more than the entire mass of the universe. Several times more, in fact. In the years since Alcubierre wrote his formula, others have worked with it, trying to find a way to make it more practical. Some of the first improvements reduced the power that would be required to send a ship traveling 10 times faster than light to only 3 times the entire mass of the sun. Further refinements brought that amount of exotic matter needed down to only the mass of Jupiter. Progress, sure, but still not particularly helpful. Now, however, it seems that we are getting closer to feasibility. Additional tweaking of Alcubierre's drive has demonstrated that it would be possible to propel an object, let's call this object a spaceship, faster than the speed of light by using only 3 kilograms of exotic matter. So 3 kilos, okay, that's much better than Jupiter, we can do that. Unfortunately, this brings on a different complication, which is that 3 kilograms of exotic matter are still a lot, since we don't know what exotic matter is, how to build it, or where to find any. All that we know is what it should be capable of. Exotic matter, with or without zebra stripes. When I hear exotic matter, I always think of zebras, don't ask me why. But exotic matter is actually an epistemic object, or rather an epistemic thing. As German biologist and philosopher Hans-Georg Reinberger defines them, epistemic things are any objects of investigation that are at the center of a research process and in the process of being materially defined. Epistemic things or objects of knowledge are characteristically open, question-generating, and complex. They are processes and projections rather than definitive things. Observation and inquiry reveals them by increasing rather than reducing their complexity. Epistemic things appear to have the capacity to unfold indefinitely. They are more like open drawers, filled with folders extending forever into the depth of a dark closet. Since epistemic things are always in the process of being materially defined, they continually acquire new properties and change the ones they have. But this also means that epistemic things can never be fully attained, that they are, if you wish, never quite themselves, and they frequently exist simultaneously in a variety of forms. They have multiple instantiations which range from figurative to mathematical to material realizations. Talking about science fiction, epistemic objects, and getting things done, I would like to end by talking about a book that is very dear to me, that is called The Sirens of Titan, written by the late Kurt Vonnegut, who is also responsible by Slaughterhouse, for Slaughterhouse 5 and Cat's Cradle that you may have read. In this book, Sirens of Titan, there are many great things. I very much recommend you to read it. But the one thing that is pertinent to what I'm talking about has to do with the fuel that's used by the spaceship of one of the characters. Here I'm quoting from the book. Salo was a messenger from another galaxy who was forced down on Titan by the failure of a part in his spaceship's power plant. He was waiting for a replacement part. He had been waiting patiently for 200,000 years. His ship was powered by a phenomenon known as UWTB, or the Universal Will to Become. UWTB is what makes universes out of nothingness, what makes nothingness insist on becoming somethingness, what makes things become the things they are and strive to be the things they may one day be. Thinking about the future is embedded in human nature. It is a byproduct of being aware of our mortality. But when we look towards the future at this particular point in the narrative of our species, we are facing the consequences of our development, where we keep thinking as single actors occupying center stage, as if we were the only thing that mattered, and as if everything else that surrounds us was only resources that can be deployed and exhausted in the name of history. It is at this juncture that the options that we currently have in stock to think about the future become insufficient. And so I try to think that the universal will to become is that thing, that exotic matter, this whatever that from where art comes, and art as an epistemic object, the kinds of things that I strive to do that can maybe shed some light on what the future could be. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
I thought I was going to show a video, but I don't think I have time.
Yeah, let's skip the video.
Okay, we'll skip it.
Okay, so thank you so much. We continue without stopping. So I'm happy to present the next presentation by Cesare Pietroiusti. His practice focuses on problematic and paradoxical situations that are hidden in common relationships and in ordinary acts. Thoughts that come to mind without a reason, small worries, quasi-obsessions, that are usually considered too insignificant to become a matter of discussion or self-representation. In 1994, Pietroiusti was available to do useful things for anyone of the audience who would make a request. He walked dogs, gave shots, cleaned out cellars, and more. In 1997, he published Non-Functional Thoughts, a small book containing approximately 100 useless, parasite, or incongruous ideas to be realized as art projects by anyone. Some of these ideas have been executed by artists and curators, such as for the exhibition Democracy, held in London in 2000. In the last few years, Pietroiusti mostly concentrated on the topic of the exchange and on the paradoxes that arise in the faults of economy systems and rules.
And this is the topic of this talk.
Yeah. The floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for this invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks all of you for coming. Sometimes when I do lectures about my work, I start with the premises, and I end in not presenting anything because my premises last the whole time. So I'll try to be very short, but I just want to focus on one thing, that is the concept of playing, very simple thing, concept of playing. So to play for me is to use elements that do exist in our reality, and this can be any kind of reality, ideological, social, psychological, anthropological, whatever, political, and to change their position or their function or their way of functioning, working. One field that one can play with is economy. This is my proposal, and this is some games that I will show you now have to do with economy, and I would say that why economy? Probably because in our condition, in our social condition, is the field where rules are more compelling and more believed to. So there is a very strong belief towards rules of economy. And that's why it's important to play with economy, so that we can have the feeling, can have the feeling, the sensation, the awareness that even in the field where rules are really strict, we as artists can change them. Maybe for a minute, maybe for a short moment, but we can change them through playing with them. So I will start with a workshop actually that I did quite similar to the one I am doing these very days here, that I did in Tirana in 2005, and basically I was asked to do a workshop with 6 young artists from Albania, and the budget for this workshop was 100 euro. And we were asked to do some kind of presentation of our workshop. So the presentation consisted in us in the Agimi cinema, some of you might even know it, in Tirana. And what I did, I explained some rules of the game we were playing, and then I divided the banknote, the 100 euro banknote corresponding to the budget of the workshop, in 6 parts. Maybe I'll do it in full screen. Is it like slideshow? Yeah. Oh boy, I don't know how to deal with this. Sorry. So I divided the 100 euro banknote in 6 parts, and I gave 1 part to each of the 6 young artists who were participating to a workshop with me, and they swallowed the part. They chewed first and they swallowed the part, and they signed a contract with me that would imply them to look for the piece they had swallowed in their feces afterwards, in order to put the 6 parts back together after the passage in their intestine. And this is the banknote reconstructed. The title of the piece is Integrazione Europea. You have to think that 2005 was only 3 years after the introduction of euro, and of course Albania was out of the euro official circuit. But can someone help me, because I see the full image here, but I don't see it there. I don't know. Okay. Well, okay, I'll do like this. To do the full screen, sorry. Okay, thank you.
No, it's the same.
Oh. Okay, well then we can leave the other one.
I don't know, sorry.
Sure.
You have to mirror the screens.
So the banknote was actually reconstructed in a, idea of integrazione europea, European integration. And the funny story is that one of the 6 persons found her piece in her poo 9 days after the swallowing. And you can see in the banknote, in the resulting banknote, which is the part that stayed in her intestine much longer than the others. And everybody was convinced that she had lost it, and she was assuring us that she had looked for it very carefully. And she was right. She was right. This is just the difference between a €100 banknote new and our €100 banknote. We signed the contract, as I was saying, during the performance, and the contract would state not only that they would engage in looking for in their thesis for their piece, but also that the banknote put together with the contract, would constitute a work of art, co-authored and co-owned by the 7 people, the 6 artists and myself. So, if, for example, some of you want to buy this piece, we, the 7 of us, have to agree at least the majority of on the amount of money that it could cost. At least would be €1 more than 100. This piece belonged to a series of works that have to do with banknotes, in fact, with the physicality of a banknote, and with the, let's say, questioning the presence in an object such a banknote of these 2 levels. So there is the numeric quantity, abstract level of the number that is written on it, and its physical components, that is the paper, the color, the ink, the glue, whatever, all the device not to falsify, make false banknote, etc. And I show you a short video. That is not this one. Sorry. This short video is an auction, and as in any other auction, there would be offers by the audience, and in the end, the one who has offered the maximum amount would win the auction. The only rules is that the offers has to be the sum of 2 banknotes, either in euro or in pound, in British pound. This was done in Birmingham, as you see, at Icon Gallery. The sum of 2 banknotes, because the artwork is done, the performance is done with another artist, Paul Griffiths, and it's a 4-minute, 45 seconds auction.
So it starts at €10. We're not talking €10 now. €10, so €10 there. Okay, we need, so that would be 2 £5 notes. We need 2 £10 notes. Anyone who wishes to offer 2 £10? €140.
Someone was bidding at the telephone, as it happens in the best auctions.
Okay, but £102 from Copenhagen now, it's €150. This does go on exhibiting in the Icon Gallery. You'll be able to come and see it. The exhibition starts in a week's time. Any more interested in the room? Okay, let's say £136 is €200. €205 from Copenhagen, that's £140. That's the previous bid around about £4. 220 I have. 220, that's 150. That's far more even. €250 for Copenhagen now, that's £170. €300. €300 above the 2 gentlemen. Back there, €300 for an object. €505. €505 right now. Who wants to bid €510? €510 in the room? Anyone else? Are we all done? Anyone wish to bid? Pick hard, pick carefully, this is your only chance. Once you've left this room, that's it. I think the room's not required for bids. Anyone wish to bid? So I'm selling that at €505 to Copenhagen. Sold for €505.
Jakob Fabricius, who is a curator from Copenhagen, is actually the one who bid 505, and these are the two banknotes after the passage in our bodies, in the artist's bodies, and of course Jakob received the banknotes back, and together with the certificate of authenticity of this of the two artists, of course. I just wanted to tell you very briefly a story about this, having this 500 in the stomach. The day after, I was going back from Birmingham to London, the morning after on a train, and I started feeling nausea, because the stomach has a certain valve, and the 500 piece of paper was quite big and hard, and had a problem in going through this valve. So in order to, go over this nausea, I was walking up and down the train, and I was trying to be relaxed, and I started talking with this being within myself, and I started saying, I remember me started saying, okay, no, you will stay, I love you, it's okay, everything is okay, you can go, no problem. I didn't want to vomit, of course, because I should have to swallow it again, and I really didn't want it. After this, I realized that there was something, not only that there was something similar to, what a man can experience about pregnancy. So having another body within one's own body with. Sure.
Behaviorism and cognitive behavioral approach classifies dysfunctional behavior as self-destructive that produce dysfunctional negative feelings such as anger, depression, anxiety, insisting that beliefs derive from thoughts. Do you consider that? Do you think that a cosmological inquiry is a possible method to liberate humankind from narcissism, for creating art that goes beyond analyzing the human and its tools to survive in this mechanism of living together?
Can I answer?
Now this sends me back in. When I think about it, it's just like in the math books, where Tom used to have 200 dish soaps. So how would that imply into being a French fry? Into all of these political and social issues going on in the art world?
Can you repeat?
Now that I think about it, it sends me back, and I think about Tom that used to have 200 dish soaps. So how would that imply into being French fry, considering all these political and economical issues we have in the art world?
think that the two words authenticity and identity have a same root. One comes from Greek autos, and the other comes from Latin idem, and they both have to do with sameness. But I also think that the verb, for example, in Italian cercare, to research, has to do with the circle, cerchio. Cercare means, to research means to circulate. So to go in a circle, and to go in a circle means that the object of desire will not be caught, will not be taken, but will be observed by all the possible different angles. And my third answer would be this. Can you repeat?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
Possibly. Can I go ahead? There's other questions? Okay, in 2004, some friends that were publishing a free press magazine asked me to do the central page of this, to do an intervention on the central page of this magazine. And when they told me that they were doing 30,000 copies of the magazine, I decided to make 30,000 unique pieces, and to do this drawing, these 30,000 drawings with oil painting that I had never used in my artistic career before, and to then number and sign individually all these drawings. And it took a lot of time, of course, to do this, but it made me really feel very proud. And so since then I've started producing drawings in big numbers, and often in shows or in a situation like this is not the cause, unfortunately, to distribute them for free to the audience. And so I have done, for example, 10,000 drawings made with this mold that would grow on bread, but also on paper. That is the Aspergillus niger. Sorry, I said 2,000. No, it's 2,000 drawings with this mold. 2,000 with an old ink that was used in the Middle Age that I remade with a certain recipe. 2,000 drawing with a brush stroke of gold. It's called shelled gilding. It's 22 karat gold, just a brush stroke. And in this case, for example, all these drawings, this is written in Italian, but I will translate it for you. These are distributed for free, but they all have some kind of limitations or of restrictions, to say, for the owner. And in this case it says, la firma dell'artista garantisce l'autenticità dell'opera, the signature of the artist guarantees the authenticity of the artwork. Any financial transaction regarding this object will automatically invalidate the signature, therefore rendering the artwork no more an authentic artwork but a false. So the signature says of itself that in certain conditions, so when there is an economic transaction, the artwork becomes false. These are other techniques. This is a moment of distribution in a museum. This is another series that actually I made it for a show in Ljubljana in 2008 or 9. And it's made with the Union dark beer that was one of the sponsors of the show. was called the museum in the city. And these are a series of drawings I want to show you to show you.
Define the idea of Aristotle in politics, use of the body, which examines the nature of slave by enlightening slave-master relationship based on relation psychology.
Well, the problem is to find the point where the symbolic meets the physical. And this has to do with words. These drawings are well, there were 10,000 different drawings, and as you can see there, each one is different from each other. And the production has to be quick, so every drawing takes about 5 to 7 seconds to be made. And in this case, for example, the condition is, you can read it because it's in English. Of course, in the drawings was written in both languages, in Slovenian and in English. And it says the possession of the drawing is on the condition that the holder, at any time the work is privately or publicly displayed, undertakes to relinquish its possession to the first person that requests it. The act of taking possession of the artwork implies the acknowledgement of the above by the new holder, etc., etc. So basically, if you want to keep it, once you have it, you have to hide it, because otherwise whoever asks for it, you have to give it away. Now the funny story about one of these drawings that I found it on eBay, some couple of years ago, so some years after, and it was for sale for 100 euros, and I was very upset in the beginning, of course, and then I thought I'll buy it, and I did buy it, and I have it in an envelope now. I won't show it to anyone, but I will eventually sell it also in this cave for at least 101 euro as an artwork. Now, this kind of drawing can offer possibility, of in fact playing with this idea. This is probably what could be considered the best of this series of drawings. Is a blank drawing that says this drawing will be completed by the artist after his own death through supernatural means of production. And this is a series with fire. I won't talk about the technique, but we could, it's also a research on how to draw, because I've always been unable to make drawings. So I've done about 90,000 drawings in the past 10 years, in the past 14 years. And these that are made with fire have a condition at the bottom that says that the drawing is incomplete, and in order to complete the artwork, the owner has to burn the entire paper. Otherwise, the artwork cannot be considered a complete artwork. And so on. Well, actually, Paradoxical Economies was the title of a series of performances I did in Birmingham in 2007, and...
Cesare, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, do you consider yourself like religious inclined artist? Like, because this thing with eating a matter which is not considered food is like in other cultures is considered rather an occult thing, and in Western world it's rather like considered a pathology. And I thought if you ever thought about your work in terms of occult or spirituality.
I actually realize now that I was interrupted while I was telling a story a few minutes ago, And the story was about the relation with the 500 banknotes in the two different moments of chewing and swallowing it that you have seen in the video, and feeling it in the stomach and trying to get into terms with this physical object. And to me, this was an interesting creation of a polar field between violence, aggression, because chewing with teeth, you know, and your mouth has to do with a sort of oral sadistic act, and affection towards the object. So, you know, on a voluntary level, there was a sadistic aspect against the banknote, and of course, towards everything that that could represent. But when I had it in the stomach, the situation was completely different. I had to, in order to keep it in, I had to, you know, try to establish some kind of affettuosa, emotional relation with it. And this, I think, it has been a very interesting, in my experience, a very interesting aspect of co-presence of two opposite attitudes towards the same thing: aggression, violence, hostility, negativity, sadism, and affect, dialogue, you know, co-accepting of a presence of an alterity. Well, I try to be short, and this is a restaurant. We set up a 24-hour restaurant at Icon Gallery in the day when the gallery was actually closed, and the customer of the restaurant could, this were online. I was the chef, and in the paper tablecloth there was the menu, and the menu has a certain small number of dishes that I would prepare. Each dish has a price written on the menu, and the only difference from a normal restaurant would be that at the end of the meal, for all the dishes that the customer has completely finished, she or he would receive the money that was written on the menu. So, together with, of course, a receipt signed by the artist. And I mean, of course, coffee was free. This we have said already. Eating money, the auction. We also established a shop in a street in Birmingham, and for one day. And this shop was actually selling banknotes, selling 10 and 20 pound banknotes. And the currency with which the customer could buy this good was the time of his or her gaze. So for getting a 10 euro banknote, pound banknote, the person had to look at for 6 minutes each side of the bill without interruption. So and therefore there was a cashier person that you can see here that was supposed to control that the gaze was given without interruption, without distraction to the bill. This is another person. You can see the queue behind. It was, of course, for reasons of budget, there was only one at a time. And this is a person who is proudly showing. And I mean, of course, you can imagine several kind of games with banknotes. This is receiving banknotes from the audience and using a certain kind of acid that takes away the color. It's a bit of an uncanny thing. From the 20 euro, for example, for some strange reason, this was a 20 euro banknote that, as you know, is blue, is light blue, and there's a whole red things that comes out when you use sulfuric acid on it, and then to give it back once it's blanked, once it has become white, to the person who has given it to me. This is our different moments of this thing, and this is another piece that I did together with Stefano Orienti, another artist. It was a sculpture, a project for a sculpture made of all of 50 euro banknotes. Now, these banknotes would be given to us by everybody who wanted, and everyone would receive a certificate. In exchange of the banknote, would receive a certificate and a signed contract, and the contract would state that the sculpture, this object, would be co-owned by all the persons who gave us the 50 euros. Therefore, if the sculpture would be eventually sold, things that haven't happened, the person would receive back the 50 euros plus the plus value, the extra value that the sculpture would have got in the being sold as an artwork, for example, in an auction house. At its top, it had 230 banknotes, so it was about 10, I don't know, 12, I don't remember, something more than 10,000 euros, and it was put in an auction, but was not with a minimum price. It was, of course, the number of banknotes, the numerical sum of all the banknotes, but nobody bought it, even for the basic price. It was the actual value of the banknotes, or maybe. Okay, well, these are variations on the theme. It's a wall all made of dollars, $1 or $5, in an exhibition in Florence, and each person could take one. But these dollars were altered also with acid, and more or less transformed in something different than a normal currency. And also was written, also in this case, it was written that every transaction in money regarding this object would invalidate the signature of its author, and consequently would transform it in a false. The last thing that I just wanted to show you, it's about a project that I always have had in mind, and that I have sometimes realized. Sorry. Where did I put it? Okay. The idea is, the idea that this project comes from is an idea of an art fair where the artworks are for sale, but not in exchange of money, but in exchange of ideas. And so the person who would like to buy, to purchase the artwork would write an idea addressed to the artist in an envelope, in a closed envelope, and leave the envelope in a box. And at the end of the fair, the artists would open the envelopes addressed to them and decide if any of the proposed ideas, it could be, again, proposals, critiques, suggestions, insults, poems, whatever, could be considered having the same value of the artwork. And the artist, of course, has the freedom to decide which is this value and what is the equivalence between the two things. And only in case the artist thinks that there is this equivalence is matched, then he or she would decide to accept the exchange and give the artwork to the person who had who had written that idea. So this is a small project, a small realization of this project. It's not an art fair, it's a project space of a gallery in London, the Wilkinson Gallery, and 10 friends, artists, John Jonas, Jimmy Durham, Dara Birnbaum, Dan Perjovsky, Tania Bruguera, Lara Favaretto, etc. 10 friends that are also very well known artists accepted to give a piece, but of course with the possibility of not accepting in the end the exchange. Out of 10 or 12, I don't remember how many there were, 4 actually accepted. Adam Chotzko was one, John Jonas was the other, Leah Berjowski was the third, and the fourth I don't remember. This piece was also realized more recently on a bigger scale for the art fair in Bologna, in Italy. I think that's it.
Thank you so much. Can we have the lights on, please?
That might be my typing.
I would also like to invite Julieta and Cesare, if you can stay in and let's see if we have to ask you if we can play the video.
You want to play the video?
Yeah, maybe. Or do we have questions right now? Yeah? Okay. Let's take the questions and maybe we'll ask.
Thank you both for the presentations. This is a question for Cesare. I don't mean this to be like an edgy question. I'm genuinely curious if you could talk about the ethics of work that you do with money. And 550 euro is, in some countries, the average monthly income of a working person. So, yeah, if you could talk more about the ethical considerations that go into what you do. Thank you.
What is exactly your question is how do one ethically can conceive to do something on a, because I mean,
yeah, what are the ethical, what's the process, what are the ethical questions that you...
Well, I'm giving back the money to the person who gave it to me. It's not that I am destroying it, I'm just giving it back. Maybe one can, I mean, it's interesting. I think it's interesting the fact that you pose this question. For anyone who is in any way involved in art, the concept of, how do you say, production cost of production is always considered. I mean, if you, for example, create some, I mean, you have to buy a technology or to rent a technology or to whatever you do, you use money. So that was, I mean, that case was even not part of a production budget that instead was used for the meal, for the enriching food project, the 24-hour restaurant. Yeah, I don't know if this answers your question.
Anyone else?
playing the video.
Yes, no, just I want to. There is a taboo. I think that maybe behind this question there is something that has to do with the taboo of money as an object, as something that brings a special value, a special power, and its aspect has some kind of, speciality that we have some kind of difficulty of taboo in playing with. So I would say that maybe more than an ethical thing, it's more sort of an anthropological attribution of certain value that cannot be questioned, maybe. And it has to do with the relation between symbolic and physical thing. Something that might happen also in, for example, in the Christian Mass. No, that of course resembled the European integration project. The transubstantiazione concept of transubstantiation is a spirit, something spiritual that becomes physical, and this is a very dense in terms of meaning and in terms of attribution of value, I think.
I'm still thinking. It's okay.
Hi. Is it? Can you hear me? Okay. I had a question for Julieta. That also works, right? Okay. I was wondering what, in relation to the project of the futures that haven't happened in the sci-fi books you were researching, I was wondering what qualifies for an event to not have happened and what it how that implicates of the importance of the event to define the future. So,
the literature I was basing myself, it's quite self-explanatory in that sense. It's not just fiction, because I could argue that just about any book that has a timeline that said in the past has not happened because it's a fictional narrative. But I was focusing on this idea of progress and what science fiction tends to be, the cheapest style of science fiction. It's a very thin way of presenting colonial narratives and ideas of progress and scientific and technological development. So it's a way, the criteria was to chart, okay, are cars flying? No. Did we go to Mars? No. It was a very basic way of parsing the library. So that's
what I got from the literature that you showed as well, that there was a very big sense of good and bad literature, because we also didn't see Blade Runner, for instance, these things haven't happened, but it is considered...
It was there. Actually, Blade Runner was there. Philip K. Dick was there, as was Space Odyssey.
Okay.
It was not discriminating into just the, not dealing with just the crap. It was all there.
I had a question for you again. I was wondering to whom you are addressing your work, and who or what are you do you think to provoke?
What was the first part of the question, sorry?
To who do you address your work?
Oh, to who do I address?
Yeah, and who do you think to provoke, or what do you think to provoke?
Well, I've no specific, of course, I would say target. I think that it can be addressed to anyone, because, of course, it's hard to answer what do I want to provoke. So what is the aim of all this. But to make it simple is, as I was saying in the beginning, was the showing the possibility of playing with rules that are very strict in a certain condition, in a general way, and more specifically with some of these pieces that have to do with the banknotes, is actually to challenge the division between the symbolic and the physical, the material and the conceptual, the abstract, the number, and the paper and the object. And I think that reflecting on it is important, because we are, as speakers being, we constantly are in that limit, in between, an aspect that has to do with signification, thoughts, abstract ideas, that mainly is our way of relating a sign with a meaning, for example, a word with a meaning, on one hand, and on the other, our physicality. The fact that, for example, to say a word, I have to use muscles. I have to produce a wave, that is the sound. Or to write it, I have to move my hand, and to leave a trace of ink on a piece of paper.
But do you agree that playing with money or playing with the terms of money is a privilege only of rich people?
No. I wouldn't agree. Why? Why do you think that?
I think the idea of playing with money and trying what money can be and open the definition of money is like the object also.
Right. Okay. I understand what I mean now. What you mean now? The point is that the artist, in my opinion, doesn't tell you what you have to do, but shows you that certain things are possible. And that doesn't mean that if you cannot do specifically that thing, you will not be able to have that possibility, that potentiality. But the idea is that the action is an example, gives you the option to think that rules, any kind of rule, even the strictest that have to do with the economical rules and functioning in a certain social condition, can be changed or can be changed their position, it can be played with. It's just this, is that the example gives you the possibility of thinking through all the possible other ways of playing with rules. So it's playing with money because I do think that there is a taboo on it. There is a taboo that has to do with attribution of metaphysical values, special spiritual values. But it's just an example. I'm not saying that everybody here should eat their own banknote tonight.
Can I just
and swallow them.
Comment? I mean,
sure.
I think that one of the things that so you said something about how you're revealing the relationship between symbols and the body, for example. But I think that you can also say the other way around, that a project like that does sort of mystify the relationship between the material and the symbological, and the symbolic. So, and for somebody who doesn't have that 550 amount, it's not a symbolic question. It's a question of meeting needs. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that. You can disagree, of course, but I think that's just an interesting. That you can see both ways.
Well, but if you look at the thing from the point of view of possibility as empowering, as an emancipatory way of doing, that I think doesn't have much to do with who, on a personal level, could do exactly the same thing, right? And I mean, why this should be so shocking in order not to allow the viewer to think about it, you know, more than, well, I don't know, an installation of a sculpture that maybe has 100 times that cost of production in order to create a big vitrine or an enormous display. Is it clear?
Sorry, I have to continue the background question. And you say the cost is being considered, and so means like how you know how much money you are spending, and but does that mean different currencies matter to you? There's a significance to, like, if you use the money from the casino or from the board games or for anything, it's like artificial. It doesn't count in any kind of society. You think that's matter, or just because you just mentioned that you think it's a mind game, it's a trick, and you want to trick people, you want people to have a reflection, but then why we need to use real currency? Or is there any necessity to just like use the money and put it into the installation and to provoke people's thought, and but if people don't really see the touch or the physicality of the money, and if they are not able to touch, what's the matter? I'm not questioning you, but I have a lot of doubts.
Well, I could answer with again the example of the Christian Mass. You know, in order for a ritual like that to be significant, no, the person who does the communion, who eats the piece of bread, has to believe that that piece of bread actually contains something special, okay, some kind of spirit or power or presence. No, you know the story that of the Christians are into it, of course, much more. The story of the priest that did not believe to the transubstantiation, that cracked the piece of bread and blood came out of it. Of course, this is a legend, no? But it gives I think it gives the idea how important it can be in terms of giving meaning to the ritual, to the physical reality of the thing. So if I would swallow a photocopy of a 500 euro banknote, it would have been, I think, evidently, I mean, less, probably would have created less ethical questions, such as the ones that come out now, but would have been considered somehow fake, in the same way in which, you know, it would be considered fake if you don't believe what happens in the mass, in the ritual.
Let's take another.
Just please remind us what was the title of the work with the 500 euros? The European
eating money. There was two different. The 100 with the 6 young artists who ate a fragment was Integrazione Europea, European integration. But a more recent, I haven't talked about it, but a more recent version, it's called directly Comunione, and it's actually structured like with the different parts of a mess, with the introduction, reading of a text, comment on the text, ostensione, showing the object, so showing, for example, for a 500 euro banknote, all the characteristics that demonstrate that that piece is actually real, you know, all the anti-falsifying devices that are in a banknote, numbers, printing in a certain way, etc. There are several I discovered. And then in the end you have the distribution of the fragments to the other performance. That is the title of that is directly Comunione. That is in Italian communion, I don't know the name in English. Communion. The final act of the Christian ritual. And the other one was eating money at the auction, an auction.
Okay, I'm interested in this idea of giving that title to the work European integration. Is it the right translation?
Sorry, say it again?
I'm interested in the idea of giving that title to the work with 100 euros.
Yeah.
European integration.
Yes.
This is the translation.
Yeah.
So what would be like reflection, spiritual reflection and material reflection of that concept, of that process, of that outcome with the state of European Union idea and reality of the moment?
Well, of course, there was a bit of a joke in the title, but it had to do with the fact that Albanians in those years were looking at Italy as a sort of a, you know, as we, for example, look to America. In fact, there is also a movie quite popular in Italy of Albanians who moved to Italy as if, you know, it was the new land, newfound land, or anyway the land where you can find something, the object of your desires. So the idea of being part of this in this project was, because it was held in Tirana, was of course important, but also the idea, integrazione, integrare, reintegrare in Italian means to put things together and reconstitute an entirety, something in whole, the wholeness of the object. So the fact that the 6 parts of the banknote would found in the feces of the person and put them back together in one piece would be an act of integration, and this integration, we can say, it's also the group of the 7 performers who do work together, so the idea of the co-authorship, the co-ownership of the piece, it's also an act of integration, and the contract states. So that's why integrare, put together, is a title of the piece.
Thank you both of you for very intriguing and very different presentations. So maybe touching upon some similarities in terms of desire and value and time. But this time I'm going to ask Julieta a question about science fiction and dystopia, and because I find it very interesting also coming from a feminist side, looking at science fiction as a possibility, a space for thinking of a future possibility. And if you could reflect a little bit about, you know, on how do you still believe science fiction could have a function to it?
Actually, yes. It is very much having a function right now in terms of speculation. I must say I was almost a little put aback when it became a topic, because I was very used to it being my territory, and so I was sort of like, this is getting crowded, who are you people? Why are you here? This is my thing. Then of course it's not my thing, it's a thing, and I have zero claims to ownership of anything like that. I get thinking a lot, and I really have been thinking a lot about dystopia, and why, that's like a genre on itself. Some of my favorite science fiction actors are women, and Octavia Butler is, I don't know if you know any of these people, Octavia Butler and Ursula K. Le Guin, and The Dispossessed is one of the most fantastic books I have read. And I could go on. So, of course, it's like the idea of opening a space of possibility where reality that is not possible at a planetary level can take place in some elsewhere. What I find, I mean, something that interests me and that I'm focused on is not producing dystopia, because I do think that dystopia, even if the future seems horrible, and it does seem horrible, dystopia is very defeatist, because the only thing that it takes to accept dystopia is to be like, yeah, we are fucked. This boat is going to hell, and that's that. And it prevents you from any kind of action. So I am very, adamant about not, there's plenty of people working on dystopia. I choose not to.
Would you say the leading science fiction?
Yeah. I think it keeps being a space where you can, thinking different, like making world, thinking of a different way of doing things is one of the most difficult things. And one of the few avenues that are for this kind of speculation is, as a genre, science fiction. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sorry, just to add one thing to the question of why. It's because science fiction, as opposed to fiction only, science fiction tends to build not just the reality of a couple of people, it tends to build an entire world. And that's why it matters to me more than fiction rather.
Okay, we are discussing different performative cases with money as a physical object, and we are discussing futures, utopian futures, then somehow calculated futures as well, which are our actual futures. So I wonder how you Cesare, do you reflect this the so-called actual futures? How do you observe this from your artwork in the terms of the two big gestures of dematerialization that happened in the last 20 years? One, or maybe even more. One is dematerialization of the process of dematerialization of art, and another is the process of dematerialization of money, dematerialization of money in terms of these banknote currencies. So, speculative scenario, since we already live this time, somehow the cards, the running algorithms, 010101s are presenting contemporary reality of money much more than these gestures and performative relations, which are like a super theatrical if observed from contemporary context. So, like one little speculation. I gave to one idea, so just to quickly share it. In example, in a year 2 or maybe 10, there is no money in terms of currency. So there is only the museum of money, of bank currencies that is also presenting the way that people were organizing different processes of dealing with this object, which is being dematerialized in the meantime. And maybe you are the artist who is invited in this museum to do some kind of contemporary educational program and to kind of reconstruct for younger people the stories from old times. Something like that. What do you say?
Give you examples.
Well, 2004 was the year when transaction in electronic format passed over the transaction in physical aspect. The more it goes into electronic, I think the less it has to do with our body and therefore with our potentiality, with our possibility of intervening on it. So, in a way, this little silly acts about physical aspect of the banknote, so the celebration of these objects. Maybe because there is an idea of a possible loss of it. Maybe because the story of money, of banknotes, has also to do with an attempt to democratize and find a way of not necessarily having to do with the borrowing, and credit letters and interest paid on each single passage of money from one hand to the other. So, so to me is also, it's a celebration on something that can be somehow, again, played with. So, for example, before the euro, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but anyway, you tell me. Before the euro, in Italy there were the lire, of course, no? And the more common was the 1000 lire, 1000 lire. Now, there were plenty, really thousands of 1000 lire banknotes that were written with messages, with drawings, with telephone numbers, with whatever. So people would intervene on this physical object and would leave a trace on these. With euro, this completely disappeared, I would say, from one day to the other. So it's very, very, very rare that you find even a €5 banknotes with a scribble, with a message, with a word, with a signature, with whatever. So I think that is, it's a small thing, but it's an act it's an active act on something rather than only accepting its rule and its way of functioning. Because if you use a banknote to write down a note, you are inventing, even if it's temporary, even if it's a very small act, but you are inventing a new use for the thing. And this is a human potentiality to invent new use for things, especially for those who have such fixed roles and strict rules. And I don't know, maybe hackers do something like this on electronic, maybe. I'm not an expert at all, so I don't know, but maybe they think they're doing the same thing. And if it is, I'm very glad, because it's still a demonstration that some kind of mental human potentiality can be exercised even on something that look to probably most of us here completely untouchable and impossible to have anything to do with. So that we have to accept, as in religion, certain kind of assertion on divinity. Did I answer? Yelena, did I answer?
Communicate. This is not, like communicate, right?
We communicate. Because I must confess that I understand not all the words in English. My English is not so good, so I can speak okay, but sometimes I miss some words, so I reinterpret questions as it's okay. John Cage said it's okay.
The last one, please.
No, thanks for your presentations. And I have a question for Julieta. I'm trapped in your notion of time and the idea of relativity that you were starting the lecture with, saying like, in an hour, it's the same an hour in which you do many things or you don't do anything. And thinking about the different projects you were presenting, I have two questions. Perhaps one is too weird, but I was thinking, when you were traveling to the island, what time were you? Were you traveling to the future or to the past? Because it seems to me that during these 60 hours you were traveling through many different time zones and ideas about the past, the future in relation to your origin. And the other is that there are many ways in which you talk about this time as a construction in your projects. And there is one in particular that I find extremely fascinating, but perhaps it's the only one, as I understand it, in which you are much more radical in the condition of time. The others are more relative, like when it's floating the books, but the one in which you transform the books into, dust, suddenly you are very rigid in what is present, future, and past. So these are maybe two questions you can respond to. One.
I actually have answers for both. The answer is a bit, it starts somewhere else. It starts in one of the first times I got interested in time was coming back from a trip to where I was assisting some artists in Japan. I was flying back to New York, and because of the time when I took that plane, the flight was 11 hours long, and I was flying at sunset, and because the time of the flight and how we were going against things, sunset lasted 11 hours. And I was just thinking, it was weird because, I would open the window and it's sunset, and it just kept set, sunset forever. And that's when everything is like kicked into place, and it's like, okay, I need to make work about this because I'm asking questions. So when I went to this archipelago, to Kiribati, I hate Christmas. So I flew on Christmas to avoid Christmas. I was traveling to the future. I wanted to avoid the 25th, so I flew on the 24th and arrived on the 26th and happily skipped Christmas. That's the answer to one of the questions. And the other one is, one of the most terrifying things I have done is grinding books into dust. It just felt like sacrilege, like you just don't do that. Nazis do that, you don't do that. And I was really, asking myself extremely hard questions. Why are you doing this? And what is this? And a lot of that, of course, these are not the last copies of something, and there is a purpose to it. And I also kept something that I think has made a lot of the projects I also do something where I design a newspaper, put all the content in it, have it printed, and then take most of the newspapers and turn them back into blank paper. And you do that with what? It's something very, an activity for children, basically. But you pulp the paper and then you lay it and make it into sheets, and I keep all the water from that process. And what I keep thinking is that the text, the information is still there. And there is a different act of reading, a different mode of reading information that still remains. It applies to both that dust, of this dust of future that doesn't settle, as it applies to this dismantled newspapers. That's.
Just as a conclusion, I just wanted to thank Asli and Edona and Flora and Yul and Yata and Christoph, the participants to our workshop, for having participated also to this presentation. And I just wanted to say something in the end that I was supposed to say in the beginning, that is that I like to be interrupted. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You make me think how time is running. I just wanted to share with you, I'm probably not supposed to say this, but recently a person who utilized the currency is the foreign minister of Serbia, who used, I think, $1 or something, and encouraged a lot of other people to use the dollar and write a message in the dollar saying Kosovo is Serbia. So it still carries power, in various levels, just to put some context to your presentation, so other people are doing it.
It's a little bit like a message in a bottle.
Yes, and because it travels, right? So it travels, so you just write something and it travels. Just to throw something, I mean, I just wanted to share with you the program that is on for tomorrow. So we start at 6 o'clock. This is the time for the conference of Summer School 2019. I'm happy that we'll have with us Zdenka Badovinas, Patricia Figueres, Tatiana Tarago, Jana Hansen, Miran Mohar, Marina Otero, Drugova will also be in a panel. So two panels, discussions on the role of museums today, also as education institutions, but also possibly relational spaces, spaces where societies are reformulated, maybe recreated. In the second panel, we will also discuss about Manifesta as a legacy. Prishtina was awarded to be the host of not the next Manifesta, but the next Manifesta. It is not a coincidence that we have Marina Otero with us running a course this year. Marina is part of the curatorial team for the next Manifesta. So we look forward also to that panel and invite you all to join us tomorrow. Thank you again. Thank you. Just one other thing, I'm sorry we didn't saw the video. We didn't get to see the video, but yeah, I hope we will have another opportunity. Thank you.